Welcome to Christian Answers. This is Pastor Jeff Short. Glad to have you along for our discussion today. Today on Christian Answers, we're going to be talking about the recent UFO files that have been opened by the government, the Pentagon. They have gotten a number of different videos of unidentified flying objects that have been coming in and out of restricted areas, and pilots and ships and members of the military have witnessed these things. They don't know what they are. And so some people are speculating that these might be from an alien planet, alien civilization, extraterrestrial, and on and on and on. So we want to talk about that from a Christian perspective. That's what we do here on Christian Answers. We talk about things from a Christian perspective, biblical Christian perspective, I might add. And we want to do the same with this UFO phenomenon. Now, I've dealt with this so many different times in publications. I put out a couple booklets on the series Ancient Aliens on the History Channel, and those were done, I think, about 10 years ago. In fact, it was a decade or so ago that I actually did a summary of some of these episodes of Ancient Aliens. And there are some interesting episodes. If you want to really get a good taste of science and science fiction, check out the Ancient Alien series on the History Channel, because there are hardcore facts, but then the commentators take those hardcore facts into very wild, fanciful theories and explanations, and totally go off the rails in almost every episode. But there still are these files that contain videotape of aircraft, some kind of craft, doing maneuvers that seem to defy physics. So how do we as Christians think about this? The government is planning on releasing a whole batch of documents, declassifying them, and talking more about these things in a more honest way. For a long time, many, many decades, starting till after World War II, the government has really taken sort of a secretive position on UFOs. They don't want to say too much. They don't want to stir up people's fears or hopes or imaginations. They take a very low-key approach. Well, now that's beginning to change, and the government is deciding, the Pentagon and the armed forces, they're beginning to say, look, let's just give everybody information that we have and let everybody else try to figure out what these are, because we don't know what they are. So I've written down a few points that we have to consider, and let's go through some of those in trying to approach this topic. We want to, as Christians, we want to be open to the possibility that there are possibly alien civilizations. We don't have anything in the Bible that would talk about alien civilizations. We don't have any indication that there would be. But on the other hand, there's nothing that would necessarily forbid there to be alien civilizations out there according to God's will in His time. So we want to have a balanced view on this. So what are some of the things we can think about in order to have an open mind, but not a gullible mind? We don't want to be conspiracy theorists, but we don't want to be skeptical when there is evidence for something. So we want to approach this in a reasoned and a biblical manner. So let's talk about certain things. Well, first of all, the question would be, what are these objects in the sky that are on videotape? They're not very clear as to what they are, because they're being taken from aircraft and they're being taken from battleships and certain things pertaining to the military, and they're far off. They're distance, miles we're talking about. And so the cameras train on them and they see something that looks like some kind of a aircraft or a spacecraft or some device, and they're maneuvering in ways that seemingly defy what we know of physics, the laws of physics. So what are these things? Well, I believe that as Christians, we want the government to investigate these. We don't want them to cover them up. We don't want them to lie to the public and say, oh, they're weather balloons, or they're drones, or they're this, or they're that, coming up with excuses. No, we want to know, what is it that are buzzing our airspace along the coast? What are these things that are around, for example, nuclear facilities? What are they doing? Where are they from? What technology do they use? Or are they a natural phenomenon that we don't understand? So let's get to the heart of it. Let's get to the bottom of this. Let's not live in a state of ignorance or superstition or science fiction. We have technology to detect things on other planets. We have the technology to detect things in outer space. Seems to me that it would be very reasonable that if we as a government wanted to figure out what these things are, we should apply ourselves and not ignore them, apply ourselves and figure out, okay, what are these things? What are these objects that are darting in and out and being chased by aircraft and being targeted by aircraft cameras and all of a sudden disappear? What can explain what's happening? I think as Christians, we want to know the truth, and we want to be open to whatever it is that is happening in outer space. We want to know what's out there, and we're not afraid to know what's out there. If it's something that's shocking, okay, well, all right, tell us what it is. And there's nothing that, as Christians, we need to be afraid of in finding what the truth is. We want the truth. The truth will set you free, Jesus said. And he applied that to specifically the truth of God's word, but it also applies to any truth in general. If you're living a lie, or if you're believing lies, your life will suffer either now or later. And it's better to get that truth out. Just get the truth out there. Let's find out what these things are. They're flying around. They've been video recorded for decades now. And why don't we do a massive investigation, have the government put the best scientists on it, put the best engineers on it, best aircraft people and photography people, and figure out what these things are and get to the bottom of it. That's, as Christians, we are all in favor of that. We don't want to sit around in the mud, in the mire, in the muck, in the dark, in the confusion. We want to get everything to the light. That's one of the good Christian mottos. And that applies to the moral situation of a person. Bring everything into the light. Confess, get it out into the light, deal with it, and then move on. And so we want to do that with this UFO phenomenon. What are these things? Let's make a dedicated effort in this country to figure out what these things are, and if they're harmless, okay, fine. If it's a threat, okay, well, then we need to prepare for that threat or whatever it is. Now, another point to be made is, have they been doing anything bad? Have they done damage in any way to anything? It's curious. It seems like these sightings have been going on for 60, 70 years, since the end of World War II especially. But have they really done any damage to anything or anyone? I mean, there are tales of people that have been abducted by aliens, but again, we don't really know how to deal with those because we're not quite sure whether we can trust the accounts of these things. And so it's not a slight on the people that have claimed these. It's simply saying, well, we're not quite sure how to react to what they're saying to us, whether they actually experienced that or whether that was actually something that was in their mind only, or something that some influence they were under, a drug or some kind of unknown natural phenomenon in their brain. We don't know. So it's really difficult to say for certain whether these, alien abductions are really authentic or not. That would certainly be proof that there are aliens out there, but we're not really given a whole lot of tangible proof other than simply just an experience someone had. That may be enough, but there has to be some other evidence that buttresses that in order for that to be confirmed. So right now we have really no proof that any of these objects in the sky or spacecrafts or aircrafts or devices out there that are being tracked by the government military radar and photographic equipment, we don't have any proof that they've actually done any damage, that they've ever hurt anything, which is kind of strange. You know, you would think that if it was a foreign threat, and we'll get into that, that's one of the options, or if it was an extraterrestrial threat, there might have been some kind of damage or some negative impact, but no, they don't seem to be doing anything like that. Now, they haven't attacked or posed a threat, or so we can continue to investigate, but it's not like it's an emergency. A lot of people have said, well, why is the military so casual about this? Why is the Pentagon and the armed forces, why are they treating this in such a casual, lackadaisical way? I think the simple answer is these things haven't posed a threat, and they haven't been doing any damage, and they haven't been harming anything. So where there's no harm, there's no foul. It's not, I think, a government priority, or they haven't thought of it as a priority because it really hasn't posed a threat to our country yet. So, but I think that the government, the Pentagon, and the military are correct in saying, let's put out all the information. Let's not hide this in secrecy, because that's how conspiracy theories start. When you start hiding things, people start getting suspicious. Hey, well, what are you covering up and everything? Okay, put it all out there. If there are certain strange phenomenon happening above the White House or in the space, in the skies above a certain military installation, okay, just put that information out. Say, okay, what is this? We don't know what this is. Doesn't seem to be a threat, but we want to know what it is, because, it could be involving something to do with national security. Could be a threat later on, but we just don't know what it is right now. So let's look at some of the options for what these strange, mysterious aerial phenomenon might be. Well, the first and most obvious option is that it is a purely natural phenomenon, that something is taking place that can't be explained right now, but could be explained once we understand it better. So you have something, it could be light diffraction, it could be, and we have to rule all of these out, it could be the camera that's taking the pictures and the video. It could be that the lens is distorting an image, and it could be something that actually is a light reflection off of the sun, from the sun to the aircraft. There was one account that was on 60 Minutes recently, which really kind of started this whole conversation about the government declassifying things. 60 Minutes had a couple Air Force pilots on, and the lead pilot actually said that there was something bubbling up in the water. They were flying over water, and there was something bubbling up over water, so they went down to see it, and there seemed to be an aircraft or some kind of a ship hovering, and it was in the form of some kind of a triangle or a tic-tac or something like that, where that they started to circle to try to get closer down to find out what this is, and the object started to mimic and imitate their own motions. And then all of a sudden, boom, it got out of there. This mysterious aircraft suddenly disappeared. And the natural phenomenon, the natural way of ruling things out would be, first of all, you try to come up with some kind of a logical, rational explanation that, okay, light diffracting off the water, bouncing up to the aircraft is giving the image, and maybe there's a mirror effect that is showing a mirror effect of the actual fighter pilot up above the fighter plane, and it's reflecting on the water, and then that water is reflecting back up, and it's showing the image of a spacecraft or an aircraft or something. Again, these are optics, and so this would have to be investigated, and we would want to see that investigated. We would want to see, for example, the best professional optics experts come in and evaluate, and you would want to bring in engineers, and you would want to bring in all kinds of people who have specialty in these kinds of things to rule out some kind of optical illusion. And when you think about it, when you're flying in an airplane and you're up in the huge sky, there are all kinds of things that could really look strange. You've got clouds, you've got birds, you've got satellites overhead, you have other airplanes, you have drones, you have balloons that come up in the air. Some are weather balloons, some are experimental balloons. Looking at the atmosphere, you have all kinds of things that have to be accounted for. And so I think the first step would be to try to rule out any kind of natural explanation by calling in all these experts and saying, okay, what is this? And can we verify that that's what this is, and so forth. So that's the first step. The second would be that there's some military experimental craft that some division of the military is keeping secret. And we know that there are things that the military has done in the past and is doing presently that are not public. And for good reasons, they're not public. The reason being that they don't want to tell our adversaries anything about these weapons. So we have advanced weapons programs that are not being revealed to the public, that the press don't know about, that maybe even other branches of the government don't know about, because again, the government hides secrets from itself because we know there's so many spies and leaks, and information gets out very quickly. So there's a good possibility, if it's not a natural occurring phenomenon, if it's not something that can explain by optics or by some kind of natural occurring event, it could be an experimental military program that is kept under secret wrap, and that for good reason for that. So maybe they're experimenting. They're trying to find out. Maybe they have crafts that are capable of flying at the speed of light or the speed of faster than anything we know of, and are able to turn on a dime and seemingly defy the laws of gravity. Or maybe there's some kind of energy that the military has harnessed that is able to actually mimic the look and feel and sound and movements of aircraft. But it's an image, or it's an energy, burst of energy or ball of energy, or some kind of, you might call it a hologram. Maybe it's kind of a hologram like they have, for example, in the science fiction television series Star Trek. They have a hologram where they can actually make something that's not there all of a sudden come into being through energy, the manipulation of energy and light, and make something appear that's really not there. And maybe there are experiments the military is undergoing in that area. We can't also rule out that these are possibly private experimental projects. You know, we have someone like Elon Musk out in California who is building Teslas. And he's doing a lot of high technology, and he's actually doing things like sending rockets into outer space and experimenting with space travel. And he's doing this all in a private capacity. SpaceX and all of these different companies, even Jeff Bezos of Amazon has his own rocket company. And there are 2 or 3, even maybe a handful of private companies that are experimenting with space travel. So we don't know. Maybe there's some corporation, some large funded experimental corporate projects that are experimenting with these type of technologies, these aircrafts, and maybe that's what is being captured on these cameras. And if that's the case, I think it would be good for us to know about that. I think that we don't really want any private corporation to be doing things secretive to the extent that they can actually be entering our airspace. They can be violating our airspace and spying and then getting out of there real quick. And they're using propulsion systems we don't know about, or they're using materials that we aren't aware of. I think that could even be a threat. You know, we think of threats coming from governments, and they're usually the ones that do offer the biggest threats. Why? Because they have more resources, they have more technology, because of the scientists they can hire and the money to spend at these things. But if you have somebody like Elon Musk or some of the billionaires on the planet Earth, you also have to wonder about the threat of a corporate project that, you know, if you have somebody that can enter a nation's airspace at will and spy and take pictures and do whatever it wants, that's getting pretty dangerous, because they could really wield a lot of power in the world. And we don't want the corporations to have too much power, just like we don't want governments to have too much power, especially those who have a proven track record of violence and terrorism. So it could be government experimental devices. It could be private corporations experiment devices. We really don't know. So we need to get to the bottom of it. And so I'm in favor of, and I think Christians should be in favor of, investigation. And we want to know, okay, what are these things? Because they get people afraid. They get people fearful, because we don't want them to be something, for example, like the Russians. If the Russians had technology that is advanced over our technology, then they can come into our airspace at will and do whatever they want. That could be a threat. China, you know, what do they know? And what is their technology as far as propulsion systems and energy systems and so forth? You know, possibly it's a Chinese or a Russian or some other nation's project that they're playing around with our military and watching us fret and wonder and sit in puzzlement as these things take place. So we want to know. We want to know, what is this? What's going on? That's the question we want. What is going on? And we want to know, not just for our own nation's security. We want to know because of our own curiosity. What is this? What's taking place? Okay. So finally, there is the possibility that these things are from outside of our planet, from another world, from some other civilization. Possibly they are alien aircraft that have been scouting out, snooping around, spying, you might say. Nations spy on each other. Why not civilizations in the galaxy, in the solar system, spy on each other? And so this civilization, if it's from outside of this planet, could be spying on us. Again, we have no concrete evidence that that is the case. But we want to find out. We want to know. And it wouldn't necessarily hurt anything as far as Christian faith is concerned or Christianity is concerned, because our faith doesn't rest on whether there are somewhere, someplace, other creatures under God's creative activity or not. We're concerned with what we have been given here on earth and how God has spoken to us and being obedient to him and putting our trust in him, and whether he has other beings that he's dealing with. We know he has angels. We know there are fallen angels that rebelled against him. So there are all kinds of creatures that are outside of this earth that are not human. And so there could possibly be another civilization or more out there. We don't know. We'd like to find out. But that also brings up the issue that is not being discussed very much, and that is we do know, for example, within the Christian framework, within Christian theology, within the Bible, we already know that there are angels and that there are fallen angels or demonic spirits. We also know that these are lying spirits, these demonic spirits. Satan is the leader of the lying demonic spirits, the fallen angels. And we know that these beings are capable of deception, lying, tricking. We already have a history of, for example, poltergeist, demonic activity, demonic possession. The New Testament describes demonic possession. So as Christians, we already know that that's a reality. So another option that these things could be is simply they're demonic deceptions. They're the fallen angels. They wouldn't have to be all of them. It wouldn't have to be a lot of them. It could be a few of them. And one of the things they might want to be doing is sowing confusion during the midst, for example, in the midst of a pandemic, the coronavirus. All of a sudden, these files come to light of these crafts, supposedly, and people are starting to think maybe there are other creatures out there in the universe. And there could be a lot of fear sown into the hearts of humanity. There could be panic. And that's right up the alley of the fallen demonic spirits. They would love to do something like that. They would love to drive people into irrationality and fear and panic and anxiety. They would love to sow confusion and discord and disharmony. And they would love to do these things. So we can't rule out that what we are actually seeing on this video and these photographs and what the military pilots are finding could actually be a manifestation of demonic deception. So instead of something actually really being there, now demons can actually materialize objects. They can actually produce something that might even be detectable from radar or on cameras or video cameras. And so it doesn't have to be something like just an illusion or optical illusion or whatever, or some kind of a false vision. It could actually be some material deception that is taking place. And so that is just a Christian alternative explanation that is a very really possibility. So we'll have to wait and see. And in all things, don't worry about it. God is in control. So we'll see you back next week on another edition of Christian Answers. God bless.